My name is Clara, and for the last 4 years, my life had revolved around my father. After his heart attack, I moved back into the family estate to become his full-time caregiver. I managed his medications, drove him to appointments, and sat with him for hours on end, listening to his stories. He always promised me that I would be taken care of, that his estate would be split equally between me and my brother Liam. I was at peace with this arrangement. But everything changed when my father hired a live-in nurse, a woman named Victoria, who was supposed to help me. They married 6 months later, and a year after that, he was gone. It all happened so fast. I didn't even have time to grieve before the lawyers called for the reading of the will. I sat there in the office, expecting to hear my name, expecting to hear my father's wishes, but instead, I heard that his entire estate was being left to his new wife, Victoria. My brother Liam was named the executor of the will. My father's will was gone, replaced by a new one signed just a month before his death. I couldn't believe it. I felt betrayed, not only by a woman I barely knew, but by the one person I thought I could always trust. My brother. Before I can tell you what happened next, what would you do in my situation? Would you fight for what was rightfully yours? Or would you let a family you once loved get away with an unthinkable betrayal? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to find out what happened next. The air in the lawyer's office was thick with the scent of old paper and betrayal. I sat across the mahogany table from my brother, Liam, and my father's new wife, Victoria, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. The lawyer, a stiff man named Mr. Thompson, had just finished reading the final will and testament of my father, a man who had sworn to me countless times that his estate would be split equally between his two children. I stared at Victoria, a woman my father had been married to for less than a year, as she sat perfectly composed in her designer suit, her hands clasped demurely in her lap. Her expression was a mix of false sympathy and smug satisfaction. "I'm so sorry, Clara," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Your father wanted to make sure I was taken care of." I wanted to scream. Taken care of. My father's estate was worth millions, a sprawling property that had been in our family for 3 generations. This was more than just being taken care of, it was a complete takeover. I turned to my brother, my heart aching with a pain far sharper than any I had ever known. "Liam, what's going on? You know this isn't what Dad wanted." Liam avoided my gaze, picking at a loose thread on his suit jacket. "It's the last will, Clara. He signed it. There's nothing we can do." "Don't be dramatic," Victoria said, her tone hardening. "Your father was of sound mind. He knew exactly what he was doing. But he wasn't of sound mind." A sickening memory flashed through my mind. My father, in the hospital just a few weeks before he passed away, his eyes vacant, struggling to remember my name. "He was not of sound mind," I said, my voice shaking with a fury I had been holding back. "He had his good days and his bad days, Clara," Victoria said, leaning forward. "This was one of his good ones. The will was signed with his full consent and with all the legal requirements," Mr. Thompson stated, his voice a drone. "I don't believe you," I said, standing up. "My father would never do this. He promised me he would take care of me." "He did take care of you, Clara," Victoria said. "He left you a generous sum." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "A generous sum. You get the entire estate, and I get a measly $50,000. That's not a generous sum, that's a bribe to make me shut up." Liam finally looked at me, his eyes full of a strange mix of guilt and pity. "Please, Clara, don't make a scene. This is what Dad wanted. Let's just go home and talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about, Liam," I said, my voice dropping to a low whisper. "You knew about this, didn't you? You're the executor of the will. You've been working with her all along." His silence was all the confirmation I needed. "I have to get out of here," I said, turning to leave. "Clara, where are you going?" Victoria asked. "I'm going to get what's mine," I said, looking back at her. "And I'm not going to stop until you get what's coming to you." I walked out of the office and into the blinding sunlight, my mind reeling. I had spent 4 years of my life taking care of my father, sacrificing my career and my relationships. I had trusted him, and I had trusted my brother. And in the end, it was all for nothing. I pulled out my phone and called my closest friend, a lawyer named Marcus. "Marcus," I said, my voice breaking, "I need your help. My father's will was just read, and they've taken everything." He listened patiently as I explained the entire situation. "Clara," he said, "I'm so sorry. I know this is hard, but you have to trust me. There's something wrong with this. I'll get to the bottom of it." I thanked him and hung up, a small sliver of hope piercing through the fog of my grief and anger. I had to fight. For my father, for myself. I wouldn't let them get away with this. I drove away from the lawyer's office, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me. I couldn't go back to the family estate. It no longer felt like home. It felt like a monument to their deception. I drove to the only place that felt safe, the small apartment I still owned downtown. The place was dusty and smelled of disuse, but it was mine. I sat on the couch, staring at the walls, and let the grief wash over me. It was a strange mix of sorrow for my father and a burning anger at my brother and Victoria. How could they do this? How could Liam, my own brother, stand there and watch as I was robbed of my inheritance? I had to get answers, but I knew I couldn't get them from them. I had to go to the source, to the man who handled my father's medical care. But I knew that was a dead end. I had to be smart. I had to be patient. I had to find a way to get the evidence I needed to expose them. I spent the next few days in a fog, barely eating, barely sleeping. I knew I couldn't stay like this. I had to get to work. I had to get to the bottom of this. My phone rang. It was Marcus. "Clara," he said, his voice serious, "I've been doing some digging, this new will. It's strange." "How strange?" I asked. "The signatures are valid, but the timing is off. The will was signed on the same day as a hospital visit, a visit I can't seem to get records for." "I knew it," I said. "He wasn't of sound mind." I told them. "I know you did, but proving it is another matter," he said. "The only person who can help you is a forensic accountant. They can find a paper trail of falsified documents and financial fraud. And they can also get you the medical records you need to prove your case." I thanked him and hung up, a plan forming in my mind. I called a family friend, a woman named Sarah, who was a forensic accountant. She was a trusted friend of my father, and she had always been kind to me. "Sarah," I said, "I need your help. I think my father's will was falsified." She listened patiently as I explained the situation. "Clara," she said, "I'm so sorry. I knew your father was having memory issues, but I never thought it would come to this." "You knew?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "Your father told me he was worried about a dementia diagnosis. He was afraid he would be taken advantage of. He wanted to make sure his will was in order. He had even mentioned hiring a lawyer to make sure his will was bulletproof. A lawyer who was a friend of his. Do you know who that lawyer was?" I asked. I can't remember his name, but I can look for it in my father's old notes. He kept a meticulous journal. Thank you, Sarah, I said. You're a lifesaver. I hung up the phone and felt a renewed sense of purpose. I had a plan, and I had allies. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I would have to be patient. I would have to be smart. And I would have to fight for what was rightfully mine. I went to the family estate, my old home, the place where I had grown up. The gates were locked, but I had a key. I drove up the winding driveway and parked the car, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I couldn't let them see me. I had to get in and out without being seen. I walked to the back of the house, where I knew there was a hidden entrance. I unlocked the door and slipped inside. The house was exactly as I had left it. The furniture, the paintings, the photographs, but it no longer felt like home. It felt like a museum, a place where a part of my life had been stolen from me. I walked into my father's study, where he had spent so many hours working on his business. I went to his desk, where he kept a meticulous journal of his life. I found the journal and I opened it. The pages were filled with his neat handwriting. I flipped through them, my heart racing, looking for any clue, any sign of what had happened. I found a page where he had written my final will. My children will be taken care of. I have a new will with a lawyer named Mr. Thompson. I have a feeling something is wrong with this new will. I will talk to my old friend John about this. I stared at the words, my hands shaking. He had known. He had known something was wrong, but he hadn't been able to do anything about it. I put the journal in my bag and left the house, my heart heavy with grief and a renewed sense of purpose. I would not let his last words be in vain. I would not let them get away with this. I spent the next few days in a frenzy, working with Marcus and Sarah to piece together the puzzle. Sarah, the forensic accountant, had been a godsend. She had a way of finding things others overlooked, a keen eye for discrepancies in a sea of numbers. Clara, she said over the phone, I've been looking at your father's financial records. It seems Victoria has been making a lot of large purchases over the last 6 months. Expensive jewelry, designer clothes, even a new car. It doesn't add up. Your father was a frugal man. He would never have spent so much money on these things. It's a clear pattern of financial manipulation. What about Liam? I asked. Has he been involved? I'm not sure, she said. His records are a bit more difficult to access, but I can see a lot of large transfers from your father's account to his. It's not a clear sign of fraud, but it's suspicious. I'm going to dig deeper. I thanked her and hung up, a new wave of anger washing over me. They weren't just stealing from me. They were draining my father's accounts while he was still alive. They were taking his legacy and his money and using it to live a life of luxury. I had to stop them, but I knew I couldn't do it alone. I had to get more allies. I had to get the medical records. I knew the only person who could help me was a nurse who worked at the hospital, an old friend of my father's who was a trusted confidant. I called her. "Hello, Maria," I said. "This is Clara. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I need your help. It's about my father." She listened patiently as I explained the situation. "Clara," she said, "I'm so sorry. I knew something was wrong. Your father was getting a lot of visitors from Victoria and your brother, and he was getting a lot of medication. The nurse who was on duty that day, she noticed something was wrong, but she couldn't say anything. She told me that your father's memory was a mess. He couldn't remember who he was, and they were always with him. They would always make sure they were with him when he signed documents. Do you have the medical records?" I asked. No, they were sealed. I can't get them. But I can tell you who can. A lawyer with a court order. A lawyer who is trusted by the court. I thanked her and hung up. I called Marcus again. Marcus, I said, I need a court order. I need to get my father's medical records. My friend, a nurse, told me that he had memory issues and he wasn't of sound mind. Clara, he said, this is good. This is what we needed. I'll file the motion today. We'll get a court order and we'll get those records. We have a chance to win this. I thanked him and hung up, a glimmer of hope in my heart. The next day, Marcus called with good news. Clara, we got the court order. I have the medical records. I'm looking at them now. Your father was diagnosed with severe dementia. He was not of sound mind when he signed the new will. We have them. I sat down, my legs weak with relief. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I had the evidence I needed to expose them. I had the evidence to prove they were liars, and that they had manipulated my father, and that they had stolen from me. I had a chance to get my inheritance back. I had a chance to get justice. I had a chance to win. I was ready to fight. Armed with the court order and the medical records, Marcus and I began to build our case. The evidence was damning. The medical records showed a clear timeline of my father's cognitive decline, a slow and steady descent into dementia that made it impossible for him to make sound decisions. The new will, signed just a month before his death, was a clear violation of his wishes. It was a textbook case of undue influence and fraud. We had them, but they wouldn't go down without a fight. The lawyer for Victoria and Liam, a slick and expensive man named Mr. Harrington, filed a motion to have the case dismissed, claiming that my father was of sound mind when he signed the will. He even brought in a doctor to testify that my father was lucid on the day he signed the will. He's lying, I said to Marcus, my voice trembling with anger. He's a paid witness. He's not a real doctor. I know, Marcus said, but the court won't see it that way. We need more evidence. We need to expose them. We need to go public. I was hesitant. I didn't want to make a public spectacle of my family's private tragedy, but I knew Marcus was right. They had played their hand, and now it was my turn to play mine. I had to expose them. I had to show the world what they had done. I had to get justice, not just for myself, but for my father. We decided to go to the media. We contacted a local journalist, a woman named Emily, who was known for her investigative work. We met her in a quiet coffee shop downtown, far away from the prying eyes of my brother and Victoria. We showed her the documents, the original will, the falsified new will, the medical records, the financial statements. She listened patiently as I told her my story, my voice shaking with emotion. "This is a big story," she said. "This is going to be a bombshell." "I know," I said, "but I'm willing to do what it takes. I want the truth to come out." She took the documents and promised to get back to us. 2 days later, a headline blared across the front page of the local newspaper. "Wealthy Family's Inheritance Dispute Raises Questions of Undue Influence and Fraud." The article detailed the entire situation, from my father's dementia diagnosis to the falsified will and the questionable financial transactions. It was a full-blown scandal. I turned on my phone and saw 100 missed calls and text messages. They were from my family, my friends, and my brother. He was furious. He left me a voicemail, his voice shaking with a rage I had never heard before. "Clara," he said, "how could you do this? You've destroyed our family. You've ruined our reputation. You've made us a laughingstock. I'll never forgive you for this." I deleted the voicemail without a second thought. I didn't care what he thought. I had done what I had to do. I had to tell the truth. I had to get justice. The media frenzy was a whirlwind. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters were camped outside my apartment building, and I couldn't leave without being hounded by them. The story had gone viral, and everyone was talking about it. Some people were sympathetic, but others were skeptical. They accused me of being a gold digger, of being a disgruntled relative who was trying to extort money from my family. I ignored them. I knew the truth. And I knew that in the end, the truth would prevail. The public pressure was mounting, and Victoria and Liam's lawyer was on the defensive. He held a press conference, claiming that the article was a smear campaign and that my father was of sound mind when he signed the will. He even brought in a doctor, who claimed that my father's dementia was not severe enough to prevent him from making sound decisions. "They're lying," I said to Marcus, my voice trembling with anger. "They're all lying." "I know," Marcus said, "but the public doesn't. We need to keep the pressure on. We need to expose them. We need to find something that will destroy their credibility." I thought about what he said, and a new idea came to my mind. I remembered my father had a secret journal that he kept hidden in a safe in his office. He had told me once that he kept it there in case anything ever happened to him. I knew I had to get it. I had to get the evidence I needed to expose them. I had to go back to the house. I waited until I knew they were gone, and I went to the house. I had a key to the safe, and I went to the office. I opened the safe and saw the journal. I took it out and opened it. The pages were filled with my father's handwriting, and he had written about his fear of dementia. He had written about his fear of being taken advantage of, and he had written about his fear of being manipulated. He had also written about his fear that his children would fight over his money. He had written that he wanted to make sure we were taken care of. He had written that he was leaving the estate to me and my brother. I sat down and read the journal, my heart pounding in my chest. He had written about how he wanted to make sure we were taken care of. He had written about how he wanted to make sure we were happy. He had written about how he had always loved us equally. I closed the journal, my eyes filled with tears. He had known. He had known what they were doing, but he hadn't been able to stop them. He had been taken advantage of. He had been manipulated. He had been a victim of their greed. I put the journal in my bag and left the house. I didn't care about the money anymore. I didn't care about the estate. I only cared about getting justice for my father. I wanted to expose them. I wanted the world to know what they had done. I wanted to make sure they paid for their crimes. I called Marcus. "Marcus," I said, "I have the journal. I have the evidence we needed. We have to go to the media. We have to tell the world what they have done." He agreed, and we made a plan to release the information. The release of my father's private journal was the final nail in the coffin. The media went into a frenzy. The headlines were everywhere. "Dementia-riddled tycoon's private journal exposes family's greed." My family betrayed me. Daughter says her brother and stepmother stole her inheritance. The journal's contents, filled with my father's heartbreaking entries about his cognitive decline and his fears of being manipulated, painted a damning picture of a man who was a victim of his own family's greed. The public opinion shifted dramatically. Victoria and Liam were no longer seen as sympathetic figures, but as ruthless villains who had preyed on a sick old man. Their lawyer, Mr. Harrington, held another press conference, but this time he was on the defensive. He claimed the journal was a fake, that I had forged it to extort money from my family. "That's a lie," I said to Marcus, my voice trembling with anger. "He's just trying to save his client's reputation. They know they're caught. They know they're in trouble." "I know," Marcus said, "but we have to be smart. We have to make sure they can't get away with this. We have to file a lawsuit. We have to take them to court." I agreed. I had to get justice, not just for myself, but for my father. I had to make sure they paid for their crimes. I had to make sure they were held accountable. We filed a lawsuit against Victoria and Liam for fraud, undue influence, and a breach of fiduciary duty. The lawsuit was a public spectacle, and the media was all over it. The trial was set to begin in a few weeks, and I knew it was going to be a long and difficult battle. But I was ready. I had the evidence, and I had the truth on my side. The night before the trial, I got a call from an unknown number. "Hello," I said. "Clara, this is Liam." His voice was low and shaky. "I need to talk to you." "There's nothing to talk about, Liam," I said. "You made your choice. You chose her over me. You chose money over family." "That's not true," he said. "I didn't know what she was doing. I didn't know she was manipulating him. I didn't know she was falsifying documents. She told me she was helping him. She told me she was protecting him. I believed her. I was stupid. I'm sorry, Clara. I'm so sorry." I didn't know what to say. I was shocked. I was angry. I was hurt. But I also felt a pang of pity for him. He was a fool. He was a pawn in her game. He had been taken advantage of, just like my father. "Liam," I said, "I can't forgive you. You knew what she was doing. You knew it was wrong. You chose to go along with it. You chose to betray me. And for that, I can't forgive you. I can't forgive you for what you did to Dad." I hung up the phone and sat on my couch, my heart heavy. I didn't know what to feel. I was angry at him, but I also felt a pang of pity. He was a victim, just like my father, but he was also a perpetrator. He had made his choice, and now he had to live with the consequences. The trial was a media circus. Every day, the courtroom was packed with reporters, cameras, and curious onlookers. Victoria and Liam sat on the other side of the courtroom, their faces grim and pale. They looked like ghosts. Mr. Harrington, their lawyer, was a master of manipulation. He tried to discredit me, to make me look like a bitter, greedy relative who was trying to extort money from her family. He brought in witnesses who claimed that my father was of sound mind and that he had made the decision to leave his estate to Victoria on his own. He even tried to use my father's journal against me, claiming that I had forged it to make my case. "That's a lie," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "My father wrote that journal. It's his handwriting. It's his words. He was a victim of their greed. He was a victim of their manipulation." The jury seemed to be on my side, but the judge was a hard man, and he wanted to see more evidence. He wanted to see something that would prove without a doubt that they had manipulated my father. He wanted to see a smoking gun. We had to find something. Marcus and I worked tirelessly, going through every document, every email, every text message. We found something. A text message from Victoria to Liam sent on the day my father signed the new will. "He's gone. He doesn't remember anything. We can get him to sign it now. He won't even know what he's signing." I stared at the message, my hands shaking. This was it. This was the smoking gun. This was the evidence we needed to win. We showed the text message to the judge, and he immediately ordered a full investigation. The police were called in, and they began to investigate Victoria and Liam for fraud, undue influence, and a breach of fiduciary duty. The trial was put on hold, and the two of them were taken into custody. I sat in the courtroom, watching as they were led away, and I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. I had won, but I had lost my family. I had lost my brother. I had lost everything. The public reaction was a mix of shock and outrage. The headlines were everywhere. Brother and stepmother arrested for fraud, undue influence. Family's greed exposed. The case of the stolen will. Victoria and Liam were no longer seen as sympathetic figures, but as criminals who had preyed on a sick old man. Their reputation was in tatters, their lives destroyed. Their lawyer, Mr. Harrington, withdrew from the case, and they were left with no one to defend them. I was hailed as a hero. People on the street would stop me and shake my hand, thanking me for standing up for what was right. I was a whistleblower, a hero, a symbol of hope. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a sister who had lost her brother and a daughter who had lost her father. I had won the battle, but I had lost the war. I went to visit my brother in jail. He looked haggard and defeated. He sat across from me in the visiting room, his hands clasped in his lap, his eyes filled with a strange mix of regret and sorrow. "Clara," he said, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you. I was an idiot. I was blinded by her. She told me she loved me and that she would take care of me. I believed her. I was stupid. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Liam," I said, "I can't forgive you. You knew what she was doing. You knew it was wrong. You chose to go along with it. You chose to betray me. And for that, I can't forgive you. I can't forgive you for what you did to Dad." I stood up and walked away, leaving him to his fate. I had won, but I had lost. I had lost my family. The legal process was long and arduous, but in the end, justice prevailed. Victoria and Liam were convicted of fraud and undue influence. They were sentenced to a few years in prison, and they were ordered to pay back all the money they had stolen from my father's estate. The court also ruled that the original will was the valid one, and my father's estate was to be split equally between me and my brother. I was an heiress, a wealthy woman with a bright future ahead of me. But I didn't feel like a wealthy woman. I felt like a girl who had lost her father and a sister who had lost her brother. I had won the battle, but I had lost the war. I went to visit my brother in jail one more time. He looked even worse than before. His face was gaunt, his eyes were hollow, and he looked like a man who had been through hell. "Clara," he said, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you. I was an idiot. I was blinded by her. She told me she loved me and that she would take care of me. I believed her. I was stupid. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "Liam," I said, "I can't forgive you. You knew what she was doing. You knew it was wrong. You chose to go along with it. You chose to betray me. And for that, I can't forgive you. I can't forgive you for what you did to Dad." I stood up and walked away, leaving him to his fate. I had won, but I had lost. I had lost my family. I spent the next few months trying to put my life back together. I hired a team of lawyers and financial advisors to manage my father's estate. I had more money than I knew what to do with, but the money didn't bring me happiness. It just brought me a strange sense of emptiness. I had won the battle, but I had lost the war. I had lost my family. I had lost my brother. I had lost everything. I went to visit my father's grave. I sat there for hours, talking to him, telling him everything that had happened. I told him about the will, about the fraud, about the trial, about the prison sentence. I told him about how I had won, but I had also lost. I told him how I missed him, how I wished he was here. I told him how I wished things could have been different. I wished I could have had my family back. I went home and looked at the family photos on the wall. The ones with my brother, my father, and me. We were all smiling, but the smiles were fake. The happiness was fake. The family was fake. I took down the photos and put them in a box. I didn't want to see them anymore. I didn't want to be reminded of what I had lost. I didn't want to be reminded of what I had won. I wanted to move on. I wanted to forget. But I knew I couldn't. Months later, I received a letter from my brother. He was out of jail and he was working at a local store. He had been through a lot and he wanted to make things right. He wanted to see me. I hesitated. I didn't know if I could forgive him. I didn't know if I could trust him. But I also knew I couldn't live like this forever. I couldn't live with the guilt, the anger, and the sadness. I had to face him. I had to face my past. I went to the store where he worked. He looked different. He was thinner, his face was gaunt, and his eyes were hollow. He looked like a man who had been through hell. "Clara," he said, his voice trembling, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you. I was an idiot. I was blinded by her. She told me she loved me and that she would take care of me. I believed her. I was stupid. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I looked at him, and I saw a man who had made a mistake, a man who had been a victim of his own greed, a man who had been taken advantage of, just like my father. I saw a man who was my brother. "Liam," I said, "I can't forgive you, but I can't hate you either. I can't live like this forever. We have to move on. We have to be a family again." He hugged me, and I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. We were a family again. But we would never be the same. We had lost our innocence, our trust, our love, but we had also gained something. We had gained a new understanding, a new respect, a new love. We were a family again, but we were a new family, a different family, a better family. I spent the next few months trying to rebuild my relationship with my brother. It was a long and difficult process. We went to therapy, we talked, we cried, we fought, we laughed. We were a family again, but we were a new family, a different family, a better family. We were still trying to figure out how to be a family again, but we were making progress. We were a new family, a different family, a better family. We had lost our innocence, our trust, our love, but we had also gained something. We had gained a new understanding, a new respect, a new love. We were a family again, but we were a new family, a different family, a better family. We were a new family, a different family, a better family. We had lost our innocence, our trust, our love, but we had also gained something. We had gained a new understanding, a new respect, a new love. We were a family again, but we were a new family, a different family, a better family. We were a new family, a different family, a better family. We had lost our innocence, our trust, our love, but we had also gained something. We had gained a new understanding, a new respect, a new love. We had found a new life, a life that was mine, a life that was built on my own terms, a life that was free. I had won, but I had also lost. I had lost my family. I had lost my brother, but I had also found something new. I had found a new family, a new love, a new understanding. I had found a new life, a life that was mine, a life that was built on my own terms, a life that was free. I had won, but I had also lost. I had lost my family. I had lost my brother, but I had also found something new. I had found a new family, a new love, a new understanding. I had found a new life, a life that was mine, a life that was built on my own terms, a life that was free. I had won, but I had also lost. I had lost my family. I had lost my brother, but I had also found something new. I had found a new family, a new love, a new understanding. I had found a life that was mine, a life that was built on my own terms, a life that was free. Have you ever experienced a similar situation or a similar feeling of betrayal? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story touched something in you, please make sure to subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear that sometimes. The truth is all you have. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the greatest victories are not about what you gain, but about what you find.